We often picture the childhood as innocent and carefree time of one's life. But actually it's often awkward and vulnerable period, and some of the fundamental dynamics and patterns are shaped in this time, often in a form of trauma that shall persist for the rest of our life. Patterns of sex, relationship, love, and most importantly, fear. Indeed, if we really try and dig into our childhood memories, there are definitely weird moments and experiences. It could be due to sheer physical vulnerability, being yet so young. It could be the lack of knowledge and rationality to fully understand the situation. Or could it be because young children haven't yet lost instinctive paranormal sensitivity? Or yet, could they all be just false memories? Today we are taking a look at weird stories from childhood. From an imaginary friend, to a mystery trauma, to spooky sightings, to innocent predictions turning true. Here are 5 allegedly true stories from Korea about strange childhood memories. As always, handpicked, translated, and narrated by your host, Anthony. When I was little, probably when I was 6 or so, I suddenly developed cynophobia, fear of dogs. Should I encounter a dog on the way home, I would rather take an alternative route that took 20 to 30 minutes more than dare to walk past a dog. Even as a teenager, the phobia was so strong I would break down into tears or hold on to other adults on the street for help if I saw a dog. Funny thing is, I had no idea why and how I developed the fear. Usually such strong phobia should be triggered by a traumatic experience such as being attacked by a dog. But I absolutely have no such memory. If any, I only had fond memories about dogs. When I was 4 or 5, I fell in love with my aunt's pet dog, but my mom didn't let me keep a dog of my own, so I ran away with my aunt's dog to the playground. I remember I wrapped the dog in my jacket and fondled it as if it were my own baby. So much I had adored dogs, and what could have changed that so completely? It remained a mystery until a year ago. I came back home after 8 years of life overseas. There were naturally lots to catch up with my family. We are particularly close, and there's really nothing much we couldn't discuss together, except for one. When I was little, my family home was, for lack of better word, haunted. Each and every member of my family had to go through a hard time during that period, and we hardly ever discussed about those years. But this time, probably because it's been such a long time, I happened to bring it up. Do you remember, Mom? In that house, I used to see strange things. I often complained about nightmares and then we should move somewhere else. Myungchul, my younger brother, too, was never quite himself, and Dad was always on edge. But you tell me that it was all because I watched a scary film. Isn't it right, Mom? I said. Mom's reaction was surprisingly calm. Yes, you used to see strange things when you were young. I was indeed scared too. The rest of family, myself included, started opening up and were intrigued as it was the first time Mom talked about this. You'd wake up and sit up in the middle of the night. I had tried to lull you back to sleep, but the same situation repeated almost every night. So one day Mom asked me directly what was wrong. My reply was, "Why did Doggy bite my toes every night?" As Mom was a devout Christian, She prayed every day at the church that the white dog would leave her daughter alone. Maybe thanks to that, I finally stopped waking up complaining about the dog again. My brother seemed amused to hear the story, but for me, it was finally the answer to my years-long question, the root of my phobia of dogs. And then I remembered that my mom had a dog she very much cared for when she was young. It was so smart and would every afternoon come to meet my mom and her sisters on the way back from school. But one summer day, her granddad and other villagers slaughtered and ate it, and it remains a sad scar in her memory. And apparently the dog was white. I'd like to think the white dog that bit my toes in my childhood might have been my mom's dog, that I reminded it of mom as a little girl and was just nagging me to play with it again. There's no way to prove it, but it does help me feel more relaxed around dogs. It's from when I was little. I was very ill that day and was bedridden all day long. When one is delirious, one could sometimes hallucinate, I hear. I heard a strange young girl talking to me. I instinctively felt she wasn't a human. But I wasn't scared. Maybe my physical suffering made everything else obscure. I ignored her and tried to fall back to sleep. But as time passed, the girl's voice grew creepier and creepier. The voice itself stayed ever so low and gentle, but she started urging me to reply, saying, "Isn't it? Isn't it? Huh?" For some reason, I felt I shouldn't agree with her and said, "No." Right next moment, my head went all dizzy and confused, as if somebody plugged off the power to my brain and back on again. It made me nauseous. I thought I should get away and dragged myself to my brother's room. There was my mom using the computer in his room. I hoped the change of the bed and mom's presence could fend that strange girl off, but unfortunately it didn't. She followed me to my brother's bed and kept pushing me to answer her question. I kept saying, "No," and the dizziness in my head got even worse every time I did that. In a desperate attempt, I then moved to my parents' bed, but it did no good. "Isn't it? Isn't it? Isn't it?" I was literally sick of the endless loop, and in the end said, "Yeah, okay, you are right." Next moment, both the girl and the dizziness were gone. I actually felt lighter and refreshed, as though my bad cold was suddenly gone together with a strange girl. I found Mom sitting next to bed. She said, I walked in, laid myself on Brother's bed, and kept saying, "No, no, no," before I rushed out again, which left her stunned and worried. What was that girl? What was it that she so desperately wanted me to agree to? It happened when my sister was about 7 and I 5. Unlike other siblings, we were very close, and sister would take me with her wherever she went. And every Saturday evening we went together to visit the deacon of our church. Small, slim, and wearing glasses with red stripes, he always welcomed us warmly and would make us hot cocoa or give us fruit. I don't remember how or when we first started visiting him. What I remember clearly, though, is the marionette hanging at the corner of his room. It was about the size of a toddler and looked so much bigger in his small basement flat. I'd never seen anything like it before, and I was creeped and fascinated in equal measure. "What's her name?" I asked. "She doesn't have one yet. Why don't you give her a name yourself?" Deacon said. "Really? I'll call her Mimi." Mimi was the name of then very popular Barbie-style doll in Korea. Mom refused to buy me one because I am a boy, and the name popped out from my frustration. So we visited the deacon almost every Saturday, and he welcomed and treated us with snacks as always. Or even when he had to tell us, "I'm a bit short this week and have nothing for you to nibble. I'm sorry." He didn't turn us away. But then, since when, we stopped our weekly visit. Again, I'm not sure why. Kids often get bored quickly, and I think that was the case. I still did occasionally think about the deacon and the Mimi the marionette. Would he be still living there? Would Mimi be still with him? Time flew, and both sister and I became old enough to talk about good old days over drinks. On one such occasion, my sister asked, "Do you remember the basement flat we used to visit?" "Of course." "And Mimi," I said. "Wow, you do remember still?" Dad then joined in. "Do you also remember then the doll you brought back home with?" What? Neither sister nor I could remember that. Sister and Dad talked back and forth if the deacon gave it to us or I had stolen it, until I cut in with, "How could I even carry a child-sized marionette?" Dad didn't answer it. He seemed strangely uncomfortable. He just said it was all bygones and poured us more drinks. Time flew fast still, and now I am 30. A couple of days ago, we had a family gathering. Over the drinks in the evening, the topic turned to our childhood, and Mom told us about Mimi. Since when Mom started to notice Sis and I coming back home clean and neat, which was contrary to the usual routine of playing around wild and coming back all mud-clad and dirty. Mom found it strange and asked my sister where we had been. "We'd been to the deacon's." We did go to church every Sunday, so Mom just thought it should be one of the deacons there. But then one day, I took Mimi home, claiming the deacon had given it to me, which I myself have no memory whatsoever. Mom was apparently not very happy. It was just much too big in the already crowded household, not to mention she found the doll creepy. But she could not just throw it away without erupting my tantrum, so she instead bribed me that she would get me another toy if I agreed to bring Mimi back to the deacon. I agreed, Mom says, and took Mimi right out, and came back later claiming that I returned it to the deacon. To keep the promise, Mom took me out to buy me another toy at the marketplace, and on the way I pulled her sleeves and said, "There lives the deacon, Mom." Mom looked where I was pointing. A crumbling down old house that had been left empty for years. I have a very good memory. I can recall most of things that happened since when I was 3, and still quite a few things before 3. But there's one peculiar event in my childhood that had been erased from my memory. I didn't like visiting my grandparents on my father's side. They lived in a small town running a restaurant, and I always felt bored and alone there. So much so, when I had to go there, I would throw a fit of tantrum. But one Sunday morning, I nagged as soon as I got up. "We should visit Grandma! We should visit Grandma!" My parents were happy to see me suddenly changing my attitude and took the way to grandparents with no argument. When we arrived, there was a disaster just about to happen. While my grandparents were still asleep in their room for a rare day off, fire was starting from the big fridge in the restaurant and was already spreading in the kitchen. We arrived just in time and managed to stop the fire before it got out of control. Since then, my grandparents would tell me, "Our grandson saved our lives." Problem is, I myself don't remember any of this at all. My dad's from a fairly wealthy family. His parents were not very happy about his marriage to my mother, who was a simple country girl, and they started off their life with no support or blessing from them. Only when I was born and became 6 years old, my grandfather offered to get us a flat for the care of his only grandson, me. And before we moved into the new flat, so when I was about 5, I have a vague memory of a woman who was of no family relation. The first memory of her is how she helped me change the channel of the television. It was an old TV with dials instead of buttons, and was quite tough to turn for a 5-year-old. I also remember how I would ask her to rock the hanging mobile for me, or her playing with me rolling a ball back and forth. As I remember, she was young, with long jet-black straight hair that came down to her chest. She was slim and wore a black dress. Her skin was very pale, so much so I would use a white crayon much quicker than the skin-colored one because I often drew her. She lived with us, but my parents never shared the meal with her, so I would occasionally share my food when she was hungry. It was only when I became early teens that my parents told me the story from my childhood. That I, as a toddler, would talk into the air, point at seemingly nothing, often drew a person in a black dress, spoke some nonsensical language, and would throw a spoonful of rice and food into the air at the dinner table. But other than those strange behaviors, my parents told me that I was all around a normal boy. Attended kindergarten with no problem and played well with other kids. They just assumed I must have been born with wild imagination and hence some odd moments, and didn't worry or think too much about it. But then, who was the woman in my childhood? And my memory of her? Hi, it's Anthony here, and thank you very much for your listening. I don't consider myself anyway spiritually gifted, but even I have a few weird memories from my childhood, like seeing floating heads in the dark or suffering strange recurring dreams. When I complained about floating heads, my sister said she saw them too when she was younger. I guess such experiences might be pretty universal. Did you have any such memories from your childhood too? Extending from the theme of childhood, I'm going to read strange stories about dolls for the next episode. So stay tuned. If you enjoyed my video, please consider subscribing to my channel, leaving a thumbs up and comments, and sharing it with others. Until the next, stay safe and take care.